I call this public meeting of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome, everyone, to our study session. Do we have anybody sign up to speak, Becky? All right. No one wants to address the board. We'll move on then to Report B, which is the finance report. Mr. Rob Welch.
Good evening, trustees.
Good evening.
We bring to you a very brief update on where we are in the budget process. A couple of key items that we've been tracking and just want to keep you abreast of as we proceed through the year. I think the item that's on most everybody's radar right now is whether or not the district or the state will provide a hold harmless provision for ADA for the current year, the 2021-2022 school year. And we just want to let you know that we have seen some inertia there, although nothing official, but we've seen some inertia where TEA has worked with the Education Committee, the Legislative Education Committee, House Public Education Committee to put together some options. And those have not progressed into an official format yet, but they are talking about potentially looking at pre-COVID attendance rates and applying that. And if they do that, we will should see a pretty reasonable number for what we budgeted on for the current year, for the 2021 school year. It should be comparable to where we're at in the current year budget revenue. The only thing that we'll have to continue to monitor is what they do with special allocations and how they address those numbers. So we'll continue to look at that, and as soon as we have anything, we will anything that's more definitive, we will be providing that update. But obviously, that's an area that we're continuing to put a lot of focus and keep tabs on. The other
is TEA just going to decide that on their own? I mean, because the legislature doesn't meet for another year, so
they will.
They're just going
to have to. They're working on a plan to provide that. There is some. There are some pieces that where we during other times of COVID, the commissioner had more authority to do some things, so he's having to work through what his authority allows him to provide in the way of a system of hold harmless. So that, along with it being a statewide system versus a very targeted approach that they had at the beginning of the year, they felt like they needed something that addressed the entire state as well as the entire time frame for the school year, since we had multiple events occur that impacted ADA throughout the year, not just.
Does he have any time frame? Like, can that money just sit there all the way till the next legislative session, or would he have some reason that he has to get it out in this budget year for us specifically?
There is not anything necessarily driving their appropriation per se, as much as just knowing that districts are left in limbo. And so as we come closer towards the end of the school year, I think that we'll have something definitive. But until we see that, we're still a little bit in limbo as far as what our actual numbers will be. We can project a number of things, but if we don't know the rules of how they're going to actually apply it, then obviously we can't get close.
And then we don't have much input probably into that procedure either, to what he's going to be deciding, because normally we go through legislature, we'd be talking to our local legislature.
There's been some informal processes. He came and spoke to Region 11, and he actually asked for input from superintendents, and he also asked for representative examples of what attendance is. I think he possibly was waiting for now with COVID numbers dropping to, like in our case, one person in the entire district. And so that gives us more normalized attendance, daily attendance of what it is without COVID. So I think with that kind of data, he can compare that, because the best data they have is 2 years ago. And I think they're kind of hesitant to use that as as
As
the
a
norm.
baseline.
I think it'll be
Yeah.
something in between now. And even in this next session, they're talking about funding not being tied to attendance. You know, that's always been a thing, that they're going to tie ADA, and now they're talking about doing it to enrollment, which would be more secure.
Mhm.
So
Yes, less volatile.
let's follow.
So
Thank you.
you bet. Again, as soon as we know more, we'll get that information out, and then obviously how that would impact EMS ISD specifically. So the other information that's we have recently received is TEA did release their allocations for the 2022-2023 fast growth allotment, and this is their total amount that EMS ISD would receive is about 5.2 million, which is somewhat on par with what we were projecting based off of the original calculations or original formulas. But what we are seeing is a proration of that amount because the appropriations for that allotment, statewide allotment, those appropriations were not adequate to the tune of about 60-70 million to be able to accommodate the full allotment for districts across the state. So they reduced that number down about 17%. So our allocation for next year is about 4.3 million. So we're down about 900,000 from the initial allocation. And part of it also is the way that the new law works for that formula as it was changed in the last legislative session is they created these tiers of weighted funding. Right now, EMS ISD falls out in tier 2, which is about a third less than what tier 1 would receive. Tier 1 districts are the top third of and it's not based off percentage of growth, but it's based off the total number of students of growth for your district compared to other districts. And so,
and it's the top third of fast growth schools.
Of fast growth schools,
1/3
correct.
of the subset of fast growth schools.
Yes.
It's this is probably one of the most frustrating things because you have an idea of what they were going to appropriate, and then for it to be prorated as it is, to me, is vastly inappropriate. Especially only a few months ago, we're talking about a state surplus, but they're not even fully funding this. And so you have $900,000 difference in this case, or 17%. This is something that as we go into this next session, we're hopefully they're going to fix. You may remember that they actually changed the fast growth schools allotment the way that was done last time, and they changed it this time. We really wanted a different solution, and hopefully they'll relook at it because it's not working very well as it is now.
Dr. Chapman, what puts them in that top tier and moves us down?
So they have, first of all, fast growth schools is arbitrary because they pick the top percentage of districts that are growing. So if for whatever reason we went flat in the state, which we're not, it would still be that percentage of districts that would be fast growth. So rather than looking at it on a per student basis, they look at where you are percentile wise in the state. And then once you're in fast growth schools, then they create these tiers. And so there's only about, I'm going off the top of my head, about 9 or 10 tier 1 districts. Is that about correct?
That's about right, yes.
Yeah. Yes. So Frisco's in there, Northwest is in there.
But they have a third of the students, so they're all the large districts, which one may argue that.
Well, I mean, we're one of the fastest growing. If you look at
Exactly.
the whole list, we're right there at the top of tier 2, but we didn't quite.
So what I'm hearing is it's size.
It's size, but it's also disproportionate because tier 1 districts get more per child, which doesn't make sense. So if you're fast growth, why would you, what's the logic for getting more for that if you're a tier 1 district than a tier 2?
Okay.
So, and they're already excluding all the districts that they had in the previous formula where you had a lot of small districts with 500, 300 kids that only grew by 10, 15 students, and they would be in fast growth schools. They're out.
Yeah.
Based on this new system.
Yeah, you have to have at least a growth of 250 students over 6 years. So it eliminated a lot of the districts that saw a high percentage of growth, but yet it was really only several students to their small population. But nonetheless, what what we're seeing is that the larger districts that are seeing larger growth are the ones that are getting that higher tier.
And bottom line, we feel like there's a $900,000 that should have been appropriated to the
Yes.
district.
And is that just because we fell in tier 2, or did tier 1 even get less than
No, everybody
expected?
did.
Everybody.
It was
Everybody got
unilateral.
less. and
Yeah.
then-
What they did is they had
We got
remember, there's an appropriations bill where they estimate how much the other bill will cost, and they underestimated the effects of fast growth schools. And so I could say that a little bit more about that, in that I really don't understand that, since there is such a, there's so much data from the last 10 years of what fast growth schools are. They just missed it in the appropriations bill. So unfortunately, they're not making it up either.
So we will continue to look at that, but also, as far as see what we can do to make sure that everybody in the process in Austin knows how it works for us, so that hopefully we can see some change in future years, future bienniums. The other item that we learned is on an upswing from that is that our ESSER supplemental allocation is, if you recall, we have ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and then ESSER supplemental. And the ESSER supplemental amount appears to have an increase of $413,000. So that brings that number up to about 4.7 million. So we will we'll be able to utilize those funds to offset some of our costs in future years while that money's still available. So just wanted to let y'all know that we are seeing an increase there. So, and so with that, we would like to move, there's no questions, we can move on to the next item.
Go ahead, the projects and bond capacity.
Yes, so we have, just wanted to, we bring this item about this time each year and just kind of let you know what we're thinking as we are planning for the next year, as we look at the interest and sinking tax rates, as well as what our next issuance might be. And so right now, we want to let you know that we have a target of about 60 million is our target for an issuance in August, and that still keeps us at a healthy rate with as far as being able to fund our existing projects that are out there right now. But we have 2 or 3 factors that are tying into that, and so it may adjust. One being what happens with taxable values, which we won't know until the end of April what that first very preliminary look is, and there'll be some impact with that with the potential homestead exemption, along with the amount of growth that we're seeing. Those factors are kind of working with and against one another, and so right now we have a 9% target there, but with on the taxable value, and then with 50%, our 50-cent tax rate, but we are targeting 60. But that might be something that those other factors change. One of the things that we're also monitoring is just where interest costs are in the bond market. And as we're seeing seeing cost escalate, that's going to be something that we may have to factor in, is whether or not we need to increase that amount on the issuance to take advantage of interest rates before they climb higher. So it's just we'll be monitoring that market and then bringing back some additional recommendations. But I did want to put that number out there and show how it does impact our cash balance. As you can see here, we remain with adequate funds to fund our projects as they exist right now.
Is that the most we could issue under that 50 cent and 9% is 60,000? Is that what that's based on?
That's what that's based on. Yes, without doing restructuring of some things, and right now there's no need to look at a restructure option.
And that spend is based upon starting Eagle Mountain High School, building elementary 18, and finishing up, because we've got
the
About 249 million being spent, I think,
Yes,
right in there. So that's allocated among those projects.
it is, as well as some smaller items, but those are the three major, or the major ones.
Is the 155 million enough to finish out the projects? And you've got another, I just kind of figured out some of it. You've got authorized 198 million, and you've got there on that schedule 150 million.
That is correct.
So there's another 8 million left. If
Yes,
we
sir.
had the capacity, we could add to that.
There's another 48 million that, yes, if we need to issue that, we can make some modifications. Obviously, a lot of it will tie into what we're seeing in the way of taxable value growth, but
If you take that ending cash at the end of 23 and add 48 million,
that
you
is
got roughly 200 million left
correct.
to finish the projects.
That is correct. So, like I said, we'll be bringing additional information, but we want to let you know where our target is and what we're working on right now. And as we get those taxable values, we'll obviously come back with the revised plan as necessary. So if there's any questions, feel free to always reach out to me, and otherwise we'll proceed.
Thank you, Rob. Next is the operations report. Mr. Clete Welch, construction update.
With the construction update, we'll start with the new administration building, and this is a picture of the exterior wall panels as they're starting installing those. And to the right, you see the rock work, and that's the entrance to the south side of the C building. Interior wise, you're getting a lot of ceiling grid activity throughout the building, and it's moving right along. They're still working on the painting and some of the texturing. It's all occurring all at different times, but through the same process and throughout the building. The bottom picture to the left shows the bistro with some of the equipment being installed in it. And to work on that, you see some technology cabling that goes throughout the building. That's in progress. And you see some gentlemen working on the rock wall by the entrance to the front. And there's one on the right also, and you see some electrical piping in there. Moving to Chisholm Trail High School, we did show you some pictures last time from a distance of the retaining wall that we're working on. So they started that right around spring break, and they got a little bit of rain, but that is in progress, and they're rebuilding that. And Eagle Mountain High School, core construction has mobilized on the site. They are using our main entrance still. They have the erosion control fence installed. They do have their permit as of right now, and if you notice, they have mowed the property. They are grubbing it, and they're moving, and actually they're moving dirt from the cafeteria, fine arts, and gym, and they're grading that little area to get ready for the pad, the building pad, and they're putting it over there on the northwest corner. That's where they're going to mobilize their site. And so they'll be in that in a couple weeks. And then around May 1st, we should have our pad ready to go in those areas, in that area, in the athletic, fine arts, and cafeteria. Then June 1st, they'll have the main academic building completed as your schedule. And then July 1, I believe, is the stadium. So they're progressing, and they're going to need a little bit more equipment out there, but they've started going with it now. So we're proud of what they're doing, and just need to keep moving on that project. That's all I have tonight for the construction update. Everything's on schedule and moving along.
Thank you, Clete. Next is an elementary and middle school attendance zone revision for undeveloped property. Mr. Dwayne Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. This is a minor revision, but one that we wanted to bring to your attention and get your input on. So there is a new subdivision under construction called the Landings at Creekside. It's located just south of Bowes Road and just east of Elkins Elementary. When we started looking at it, there's a very small section up on the northern end of it where there's 3 current elementary zones that overlap, Bryson, Elkins, and Parkview. There's a small section that all the current zones overlap, so we need to do something about that before this subdivision comes into play. So the subdivision's only allotted or scheduled to have about 315 homes, which when we plug it into our formula, that's roughly 60 to 65 elementary students. And so the impact from that, right now, currently working with the demographer, with Zonda, the district's demographer, 150 of those homes have already been included in some of the past numbers that they have provided into Elkins enrollment numbers. So with the potential impact that it could have either on Parkview or Bryson, the recommendation that we'd like to go forward with is that the entire Creekside, the landings at Creekside would be in the Elkins Elementary School Zone. So the impact of that, Elkins currently is approximately right around 590 students. The portion that would be, since 150 homes are already really accounted for in those numbers, we'd be adding maybe another 30 to 32 students onto that, which would put Elkins closer to, but still below capacity. And then on the middle school side, the students that would be in that zone would attend Creekview. Creekview is currently right around 837 students, and there'd be approximately 44 middle school students going to that. So going to Creekview would still keep them, they would be very close to where we would like them in our target capacity numbers, but that definitely is more appealing than sending them on to, say, Marine Creek, where we already are very much at capacity. So this is just a report, just to kind of let you guys know. I can answer questions if you have any. Or have any.
I have questions, a couple questions.
Sure.
So both sides of the street, it's going to be that addition or just one side off of Bowes?
Just,
Creekside?
just the south side of
Okay.
Bowes.
What are they building on the side that Elkins is on?
Go back to your
Wait.
round picture.
Yeah, the north side?
Google.
On the north side of, are you talking about the north side of Bowes?
Yes.
On the north side of Bowes, there is, that's actually the ranch at Duck Creek.
Okay,
And that's-
where will they go?
Well, we're going to,
Okay.
probably that'll be coming next month.
Okay,
I think we're looking at that.
I have one more question about attendance.
Yes, ma'am.
So the east side of Boswell High School, that subdivision, is that a connection from the housing behind? Is it expanding out this way?
Yes, ma'am. The Boswell Meadows, which is just basically like to the west of Old Decatur Road, behind all the
Yes.
new Burger King, all that.
Yes.
That's an expansion of Boswell Meadows.
And it's just going to come all the way through?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so we don't know about attendance zone for that either,
For elementary,
correct?
more than likely that would be Bryson.
Oh,
So,
Currently zoned Bryson.
yeah,
it is all zone, okay.
but that'll be something that we'll look at as far as total numbers.
That's a kind of a natural dividing line there. I mean,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
that neighborhood, okay.
Yes.
And that's Coburn's house there, the white rooftop.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Correct.
Yeah, right
That's
here.
correct.
That's Coburn Farm.
And he has all that's undeveloped now? Or does he-
Really, it's just this one, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stop right there?
Yeah, it kind of comes down
Gravel
and then
road.
grabs here.
Right.
So Coburn's all this way.
And the other side, what Ms. Hadley was talking about, is it being developed, that 80 acres.
Yeah, this is the ranch at Duck Creek.
Okay, thank you. Time to turn around, they're building more.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to keep up with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
these, what Dwayne was talking about, the rest of this is really we need to nail down the high school attendance zone lines, because that's going to drive where we put those other ones. So we didn't want to make a step that
I
we
just
have to
don't,
redo.
okay. I just don't want to move them and then move them again,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's what we
But
got
that's why
into
you're
that
bringing this one,
before.
because you feel
So
comfortable.
This one is so,
Oh, you won't
because it's
have
got 3 different schools involved in it, we need to clean that one up.
Right.
And feel like it could stay at Elkins, since the majority of it, that is, 2/3 of it is already
Okay.
Elkins.
Well, as we bring in the other ones back, Mr. Jones, if we could make, I know we can't guarantee that those kids wouldn't move have to move, maybe we'll put a new elementary school right there. Who knows? We may have to, but if we can kind of keep that in the planning that we're not.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
Mr. Jones, whenever they come to us with these sales and buildings, I guess the realtors want to know what their school pattern is, correct?
Yes,
And
yeah.
that's why we define it so early.
Absolutely. I mean, they use it as a selling point, but then it's also, I mean, they try to partner with the district as best as possible. But yes, I mean, they get questions also from potential home buyers, which school will my student attend? And so we take all that into account as best we can. We certainly look at trying to minimize the amount of times that the student has to move as best that we can as well. But, as some of it moves and some of it changes, but we certainly take those into account.
We can't, the east side, moved several times, didn't have much choice. But
Right. Well, this one was, I mean, those are all going to go to Boswell. It's really the determination is what middle school they end up. That's the decision that hasn't been made yet. When we start to balance weight and creepy.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move to the Human Resources Report, and we have a 2022-2023 additional staffing proposal.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Chadwell. Tonight, I want to bring to you a culmination of a lot of work that really started back in late January, early February. So last month, what we brought to you was the campus staffing proposal, which really comprised of classroom teachers. This report is a little different. These are the people that support our campuses in every department in the district. So what we did was met with every department head from every single area of the district and really tried to come up with a comprehensive view for you of the needs of the district going forward into next year. So some of the things on here you're familiar with because you've already received a report, like for instance, the police department. We just heard we have elementary 18 coming forward. Typically what we would do the year prior to opening the elementary school is bring some initial positions to get the principal and the principal secretary, the assistant principal started to get ready to open that school up for 23-24. But in addition to that, we meet with the other department heads to address the needs in their departments. So for instance, in operations, there are a lot of things that are currently outsourced that Mr. Welch and his team are bringing in-house to do the work. Special programs, we've seen a significant growth, which you're going to hear a report later on tonight about the needs of our students in those programs. The really cool thing about the kids coming back to school is they're back signing up for CTE courses, and we're just seeing growth in identification of kids in so many areas, our PACE program. So all of us have been meeting over the past couple months really to try to get a comprehensive, one strong look, and that's what this report shows you beginning on page 24 through 26. So for this month, we're bringing these as a report. We would bring them back next month for approval consideration. The other thing we did a little bit different than probably what you've seen in the past is broke down the funding sources to really help you understand that some of our funding comes from federal funds, some of our funding comes from food services. So we broke that down just so that you can see how we're trying to stay within the budgetary constraints that we know we have. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
That was very helpful to break it down the columns, I think that, because the total cost, really to the budget's about $3 million, it looks like. And then, as was explained, some of that's also going to be recovered because we're bringing things in-house.
Correct.
The police department is one.
Correct. Yes, it's offset by 860,000. Is that about the sound right? So it's offset by that amount. And then when you consider that we have some costs yet to be estimated because they'll be able to do some after-school work for us, extracurricular. And so we didn't put that number to it because really we have to have a full year making sure that that's going to be how effective that's going to be. But a lot of those positions will be able to help us without having to pay extra duty pay to officers in that area. So that is offset there. And I appreciate you saying that, how that's broken down. I think it was easier for me because I had a number as Dr. Gamel knows, that I needed to stay under.
Yes.
So,
Well, it doesn't count like the painters and some of the other things. Now we're going to hire a full-time person that's going to come out of the budget from repairs. Is that?
correct.
Is that how
So
we'll switch?
painter's a good example. I didn't put, we didn't put painters in another funding source for the ROI on that, mainly because I don't have a number to tell you yet. It should reduce it because there's projects. In fact, Mr. Welch and I were talking about a painting project earlier today. If these painters were on staff, we could use those painters to do that job versus outsourcing that work. But there'll be times where it'll even be more than those 2 painters. We have millions of square feet. They'll be painting every day in different locations, and there'll be a definitely ROI on that. That'll make a difference.
Yes, go ahead.
When the police department, when Ramirez talked about funding sources, he talked about looking at some grants and things. Are those in the works?
Yes,
or do we get to-
they are. In fact, we've received a $500,000 grant, the COPS grant, that was actually done through a previous staff member that brought that to us, but there's other COPS grants funding. Having our own police department will be eligible for funding that we would not have been previously. So we see that's offset there. It also has some opportunities there for us to purchase items at a reduced expense. For example, our patrol cars, most likely those will be patrol cars that will be sold by like Fort Worth Police Department. They depart with their cars at about 85,000 miles, but they are in excellent condition. We're not going to have pursuit. So we don't have to have, those cars have to have a low mileage, and so we will be able to have some reduced expenses there as we outfit the department. So, yes.
And then 2 more, the fire system technician that's at the Price Maintenance Facility.
Yes.
What,
So we outsource currently, sure, we outsource currently and will continue to SAS. So they test all our fire alarms, but there's times where we have issues where some of our systems, particularly our legacy systems, those that have been around for a long time in buildings that have been renovated, you have issues in those areas. And so if every time we have to call SAS, there is a charge for that. Having this person in-house will allow them to be better educated on what that is. We believe, again, there'll be an ROI there, but we don't have it estimated exactly. If I missed anything, Mr. Jones? So, for example, Boswell's renovation, we've had SAS come out a number of times. This building, only about a month ago, I know because I would love to hear that beep as I walked in the morning. It tells you, call SAS.
Well, they're here every day.
Here every day, okay. So hopefully this will be, I mean, we're still going to need them at times,
Yes.
but hopefully this will help.
we're going to be proactive in some of the.
Well, typically a fire alarm system, we already have to do testing as a part of the system, okay? So there wouldn't, it's either working and functioning and you're testing it as you have to anyway and you're getting it signed off, or it's not working. So there's really not necessarily a proactivity we can do on the panels. It's when we start having trouble. What we need, and we see this in heating and air conditioning, we have some specialist people in heating and air conditioning that know the system so well. Quite frankly, they know it as well as the people coming in to do service, sometimes better. And so that's what we're hoping to gain in this area, somebody that's an expert in the fire systems. Mr. Welch, anything you want to add to that?
No, it would have been exactly, we had the winter storm, you know, we were so reliant on getting somebody here versus having somebody in-house to reset those and reprogram. So it really identified at some point, it's been a need, but it was very evident for us.
Yeah, so many campuses. How about the registered nurse at the Price Maintenance?
That's a reclassification. This is an individual that we added to our staff that helped with COVID. And she's been very, very helpful in this area, and we're looking at expanding the number of days there. So with a district this size, somebody's going to be sick. And so having another nurse here that can then respond to those campuses that may be without a nurse in a specific day, or support with a child that may have some kind of specialized medical care where this person will be trained to be able to support them to assist in training.
So it's not another FTE, we're just reclassifying?
Correct. Yeah, that's why the amount is 15,000.
Yeah, it's less. And that's at the Price Maintenance, so that's where she'll be, or he'll be located?
Yes, except they're never there. They're always on a campus.
Would they not go to the new?
They will, yes,
Okay.
yes.
This is where they are now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they'll be at the new administration building.
And the ag teacher in Saginaw, do we have two at every campus and we just only have one now?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
that's what I
correct.
thought. All right,
correct.
thank you.
And you see the PACE bilingual there. We
So
have that.
glad we're doing that.
Floral design, health science, those are all based on enrollment. That number usually comes, y'all know by experience, we bring those to you probably at the end. There'll be a little fluctuation or something, and those fortunately are offset with state funds, as y'all can see. So we try to do those, and we are really working on our CCMR. I know Dr. Parker and Dr. Barnes and Dr. Eldridge are working really hard on that because there's also additional funding to that. Did I miss somebody? I'm sorry. Tricia Levitt, Mary Jones. Okay. Keep going. But if I could just stop for a second, this is an example of ROI. So can you talk just for a moment, Dr. Parker, about the ROI on the CCMR?
With CCMR, our goal is for every student, that's a lofty goal, to graduate with a CCMR credit. But we get additional funding if that student graduates, not with just a CCMR credit, but an additional CCMR point, and that comes from certifications mainly. So I can get a CCMR point for college readiness on TSI, ACT, SAT, advanced placement, but if I get an additional point, we get money up to $5,000 per child. If that child is get $5,000 for low socioeconomic, you get $3,000 for a non-low socioeconomic and $2,000 for a special ed who graduates above and beyond CCMR. So that additional point. So I think it was last year we got about $580,000 for that. Oh, no, that is not correct. It's just below $500,000. But with our increased focus, we expect that return on investment will then help pay for certifications and the work in the testing. So it's a good return for investment. And I'll tell you, Tricia Levitt back here with everyone he's mentioned, we've really been amazing, targeted, and every high school campus has a plan to get those seniors CCMR certified. So many will have a point and then we'll get that additional money.
Okay, CCMR, help us.
College career readiness. Military, they've taken out. Military, they've taken out for now. May come back, but it's college career readiness. And you get points from advanced placement, SAT test, ACT test, TSI, and certification.
This came at the same time as the new school finance system, so these additional pockets of funds that are available for that. Also, we just want to mention there, we see a number of special education positions we have listed. We have growth positions. We have 14 elementary, secondary positions, 15 aides, speech language pathologists, 3 diagnosticians, dyslexia therapists. So there's a large number of people there that we're bringing in. Some of that is offset by state funds, some is not. So it's kind of you'll see it both. For example, diagnostician is mixed. So these are really, really important key positions. This is all based upon the number of students that are in those specific programs and also looking for growth for this next year, all based on the student's IEP. So if y'all have any questions on any of those, be happy to answer those. Dr. Hughes is here as well.
She'll address some of that growth in her report.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the Human Resources, TASB Risk Management Fund Interlocal Participation Agreement, abbreviated IPA. Ms. Haskell.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. I bring to you guys today the amended interlocal agreement from Tasb. We are making changes from the 2012 agreement that was made. 3 parts that are the changes. The first part is going to be clarity and questions. They bring this up because several members of this fund program had issues when it came to clarification on what their duties were and their responsibilities. The second part you will see will be the fund members' obligations. So a fund member would be us. What our obligation is to ensure that we fulfill the agreement on this as well. And the revisions related to dispute resolutions. And so that will go into play if we needed to dispute anything related to unemployment. And that would mean if we paid out an individual for unemployment and decided that, oh, we do not agree with what Tasb agreed. So we would then use a legal representative under Tasb to help support the district and making sure that we did all that we could to ensure that we did not pay for that unemployment for that employee. As you can tell with this, a lot of the changes are not applicable to the district because we only pay for the unemployment. We outsource currently right now our workers' comp, so we're not a part of this fund development, with risk management fund development when it comes to that portion of it. You may have not been able to see this agreement in 2012 because it did not require the board to review it or to approve it. They have made changes and now is a requirement for the Board of Trustees to be able to review it, discuss it, and then make a final signature and approval on it. What I have provided you guys already is a little Q&A. I wrote down what the agreement is, and I also wrote down in addition to the changes that have been made to that, and if it's applicable to the district or not. Are there any questions?
Big part of it seemed to cover the unemployment.
Absolutely.
It looked like that was the main.
And a lot of that did not change for us. All it is now just indicating that we have more responsibilities as fund members to ensure that we fulfill the agreement. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Brings us to report E, the Education Services Report, and it is a special programs report. Dr. Hughes. And I'll leave you enough time.
It may be.
It's okay. I was going to just tell you in advance, if it's not, you can cut it wherever you want and we'll pick it back up at 7.
All right,
So
whatever
feel
works
free
best.
to.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll kind of see where we get close to 6 o'clock, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
All right, well, trustees, Dr. Chadwell, I'm excited to be able to present to you an update on special programs and all the new developments that are going on, including our program growth. So first, I want to provide just a brief overview that the Department of Special Programs encompasses our multi-tiered system of supports, special education, child find and compliance, and our Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Also in our department, my leadership team includes, we've had some new members added. Ms. Bertzalauskas, who is our child find and compliance specialist, joined our team at the end of the year last year when that position was added. And then Ms. Kimberly Goff, who I'll be bringing to you for an introduction next time, took the place of Ms. Cindy Peavy, who moved into the Director of Special Education position. So those are the newest team members that we've added to our team this year. And so far, Ms. Bertzalauskas has processed over almost 600 referrals for special education evaluation since August. So we're staying busy, keeping her busy. First, I'd like to review the multi-tiered system of supports. Our MTSS program is under the direction of Ms. Beth Epps, who's doing a fabulous job. Our MTSS program includes our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. Our Tier 2 supports are supplemental to what students receive at Tier 1, which is what all children receive in their general education setting. The supplemental supports include additional services that are provided to some students who have more needs for academic, behavioral, and social and emotional support. When students are not responding as we would hope to Tier 2 supports, then they are recommended for a more intensive intervention or services, and we provide those through Tier 3. And those are more targeted, individualized supports through the general education program to address their academic, behavioral, and social emotional supports. So it's our fewer students, but with the greatest needs. So our highlights for the MTSS program on the academic, again, our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports include our intensive interventions and general education dyslexia services. And then the behavior, the Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports include the behavior support teams and the student success academies. Then social emotional support is provided to students at Tier 2 and Tier 3 through intervention and crisis counselors, our SEL resources, and community partnerships. So the students who have been receiving services at the elementary, we've had 1,217 students receive Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports in reading and math. And at the secondary level, that number is 758. That does not include the number of students who are currently receiving the tutoring services that were mandated from House Bill 4545. So that's in addition to all the tutoring services that are being provided. And then on the behavior support side, we have a total of 131 students who are benefiting from Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. We have 18 that are worked through a coaching model with teachers. We have 24 students who are currently being monitored at Tier 1. And then these are the campuses where we have our Student Success Academies currently at the elementary and the secondary levels. So our dyslexia student count, you can see that we've had experienced growth in the number of students identified. A significant change that has happened this year is that the Texas Education Agency, at the strong advisement of the State Board of the U.S. Department of Education, is that now all evaluations for dyslexia must occur under the special education avenue. So we no longer have the option for eligibility for dyslexia to be determined through general education evaluation. And so the model that we've developed to meet this need is we have our dyslexia therapists, who are the experts in all things dyslexia, working with the diagnosticians to help complete parts of the evaluation. So they co-evaluate to determine eligibility. And students, once identified, then the committee convenes to determine if the student would benefit from the standard dyslexia protocol, which is handled on the general education side, or if they require specially designed instruction, then would establish eligibility on the special education side. So currently we have, if you look at the middle of the year from 2021, we had 292 students identified to receive services. And at that same time frame, this current school year, we're up to 491 students receiving dyslexia services, with 94 evaluations pending at the time of this report.
You think that's a result of the moving of the evaluation out of the general ed?
Well, we've seen the upward trend before that happened. What I think is that we are doing a better job. You know, the state is expanding how we screen for dyslexia at K1 and 2, and so we didn't have that same screening system. There's a requirement for us to respond when we flag students at younger grade levels who are identified as at risk for dyslexia. So we've broadened the scope of our evaluations. Typically, we would not evaluate children below the second grade because they're still acquiring reading skills, but the research didn't support that practice overall. So now we're evaluating at the first sign of any challenges, which is kindergarten, first grade.
So that's some of the reason for the increase in numbers. They're younger kids.
Yes, sir. That's some of the increase, and then we are seeing a higher prevalence. We overall, as a state, we're under identifying students with dyslexia. They didn't represent in the general population. Individuals with dyslexia is about 14% of the population, and so we had to catch up with that. And then, you know, Texas was still in trouble with the U.S. Department of Education regarding how we're identifying students with dyslexia, and so through the state's Child Find efforts, that's also cast a wider net so that more information has been provided to families and to communities on the district's Child Find obligations and the options for us to evaluate students who may be suspected of having dyslexia. And that extends also to private schools that are located within the district's boundaries. So if our Child Find obligation also extends to private schools.
Dr. Hughes, okay, so we're talking about helping them out and trying to diagnose them early. Do we train the gen ed teachers in K1 to look out for some of these areas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's probably what some of it is too, because you've got more eyes on them.
Yes, and I think as we've, you know, the reading academies, and so the state has increased its efforts to build the capacity of all educators to better meet the early language acquisition and reading needs of students. And so I think that combined with the screening process we're finding more children.
And catching them early.
Yes.
One other note too is that this district is committed to what's called the Take Flight curriculum, which is working through Scottish Rite And there's districts that utilize different types of curriculum. I'm not saying they're not effective, but I would say that this one's more time tested and research proven. We also have a commitment to either hire somebody who's a certified academic language therapist, or called a CALT, or somebody that will train to become that. And so that's something that Beth Epps working with those individuals will help them get in that pathway to get trained. And so we have done a tremendous amount of work there to just for that commitment. Doing the Take Flight curriculum requires a student-teacher ratio that is very exact, and also the amount of time that it takes to go through that, but it's absolutely worth it. The success rate in that program is very high, and we'll remain committed to that even with the numbers that we're seeing. So we just had a meeting, 2 weeks ago, talking about that and how we can provide the staffing support for the numbers that we have.
Did you have another question? Okay.
We are looking, just one, I'm sorry, one other quick thing, is that we've already brought y'all the supplemental compensation plan, but one that we will be bringing to y'all for consideration for this next year is to place a stipend for the certified academic language therapist for the amount of time and effort that it takes. When I put Beth on the spot, how many hours does it take in order to be certified as a CALT?
It's a 2-year program, so it takes about 160 hours of seat time, and then it's 700 hours of therapy on top of that before you can use it for the test.
Just absorb that 700 hours. It's a considerable commitment. So we want to make sure that we become the place that people want to come to do that work in, and we are, because there are people that have left other districts because they've abandoned the Take Flight curriculum, and so they want to come here because that's how they want to work, because they know it's effective. So, yeah.
So now I'll continue with a special education overview and update. So as a reminder, we serve students ages 3 through 21, and we serve students from birth if they've been identified as students with auditory or visual impairment. So we actually co-intervene on those little bitty ones. We serve students across all 12 disability categories, and we provide a continuum of services that includes specialized instructional settings. And so I provided for you an explanation of some of the program acronyms that we use currently in the district. I'm not going to read those to you, but it just captures, if you hear us talking about an SLE class, that's a structured environment for students with autism or developmental disabilities in need of that.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Yeah. We have a whole dictionary of acronyms in special education. And then we also, special education also encompasses specialized supports and services such as speech language therapy, occupational physical therapy. All of these are listed here. These are all determined based upon the student's individualized needs as determined by the admission review and dismissal committee meeting that convenes for each child at least one time annually. So this is our a little update on our AIMS program. That's our 18+ program. These are for students who have completed their high school credit requirements but will be graduating based upon completion of their individualized education plan based upon their post-secondary goals. And I've provided a few pictures of our young adults working and developing their vocational skills. So we currently have community partnerships at Hadley Development Center, Community Link, the Saginaw Community Center and Recreation Center, the Saginaw Library, Mod Pizza, and Goodwill. We've had 12 graduates earn paid employment. We have 8 connected to services. Outside of social services, we have 5 that are participating in a state work program. We have 15 students who are connected to agency services. And our AIM students also provide services within the district to include shredding. They provide a courier service within our special programs department. They don't drive. We have adults that drive, and they perform the work. And then we have assembly and materials preparation for elementary schools and at Hadley Development Center.
So Dr. Hughes, how many students are in the AIMS currently?
We currently have 19 students who are participating in the AIMS program. And then we have our Trailblazers, our special athletes. That program also is growing. It's grown from 5 students to 22 student athletes currently. We just participated in the Keller ISD track and field meet on the 22nd. That was the coldest I think I've ever been at a track meet. But they were champions in every regard, and of our 22 athletes, we had 20 that participated in 6 sports, and so I can bring a report later, recognition of their accomplishments. We had gold and silver and bronze medal winners and participants at all levels. So it was a fun day, and it's exciting to see that our Special Olympics program growing as well. Now on to our special education trends. I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. So here you can see for our trends from 1920 to current. Some of our largest growth areas are with the students who have speech and other disabilities. So that's the speech plus, less growth with just students who have speech only. But this is based upon the PEAMS instructional settings. So you'll see that this does not align with some of our continuum of programming, but this is specific to PEAMS, and how we report our PEAMS data are based upon the services and the amount of special education time students receive. So that's the breakdown here by instructional setting.
What drove that speech number? That was just such a huge increase in the speech number.
What that tells us is that most of the students or many of the students that we've added have speech in addition to another disability. So that number is impacted by the other disability. And then our total child count, you can see the percent in 1920, 9.2% of the district's total population were identified as students with disabilities under the special education umbrella, compared to our current rate of 13.2% with a child count of 2,976 students. And then when you look at the trends by disability category, you can see that our largest growth area is in the area of learning disability, which also includes, so if a student with dyslexia requires an individualized education program under special education, they would be identified as having a learning disability in the area of reading. So that accounts for some of the growth in that area. But then you can see also one of our largest, fastest growing populations is our students with autism spectrum disorders that are growing at a rate at a higher rate than the overall growth of the program. So I'm really excited that we held our first Parent Education Parent Advisory Council meeting. On March the 3rd, we had 7 parent representatives, of which 5 were able to attend, but it reflects students at all levels from preschool or early childhood special ed through our young adult AIMS program. We also had 2 special programs department representatives, and the work that we completed at our first meeting was to get acquainted, to establish the mission. So I'd like to just review this with you briefly. That in partnership with the Advisory Council, the mission of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council is, as partners in education, the mission of the EMS ISD Special Education Parent Advisory Council is to empower families with the knowledge, resources, and representation leading to meaningful outcomes for every student that are intentional, authentic, and futures focused. So we did really great work. We also started the identifying the priorities for the work, and so the next meeting will be on May the 12th, and we'll continue our strategic planning activities where we'll set the framework for the council. We'll also establish the meeting calendar for the 22-23 school year and make sure that we establish the priorities that are important to the council members.
You know I'm going to have a question, right? Okay, so how were the parent reps? How did you select the parent reps? So
some of the reps were identified based upon the collaboration that we've already had, and then also with the families, and then some of the other reps were based upon campus recommendation. Some of the work of the council is to actually establish what that framework needs to look like. If we have the main advisory council, but then each campus might have a representative, so that we have a parent liaison at every campus, so that there's representation at every campus, and so that families have a point of contact or someone that if they have questions, they're new to special education, or they have a concern, that we have someone that they can be immediately in touch with.
Thank you. And then have you decided how many meetings a year you're going to have, or is that still in flux?
That's still up to the advisory council, so we haven't yet established what that meeting schedule will be, but I will look forward to providing you with an update.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
love that you have one. That's great.
Yes, it is.
Yes, we're excited, and it was powerful to develop the mission and collaboratively, and then be able to move that forward into action. So, thank you. Okay, our special education highlights. We continue to experience unprecedented growth. We have a high volume of referrals and evaluations. Our AIMS program is continuing to expand into the community. Our Trailblazers Special Olympics competition has resumed after being, during the COVID, there were no opportunities for our athletes to participate. And then we implemented the Special Education Advisory Council. So this may be a good place for us to take a break. Mr. Newcomb or Dr. Chadwell?
We were just discussing, you want to go ahead and finish?
Sure.
So you don't have to come back, and
Sure,
may have
that's
some
fine.
audience people that would appreciate that too.
Okay.
So
We don't
thank you.
want to rush.
Yeah, we don't want to rush you.
It's
So don't rush you.
probably,
Because I probably still have questions.
probably about 10 minutes, but so would it be better to break and then come back because you don't need to rush?
Okay, I don't, it depends on the scope of the questions, but it would probably be, once I talk about the compliance, you may have some questions
Yes,
with
that's
as well. And then the ADA, I think the section 504 will go fairly quickly, so I'm amenable to whatever your preference is.
I'm going to have questions on the audit and the
You want to come back at
compliance.
7 then?
I don't know. I just want to know
Okay.
what we've been cited for.
We'll take a break right here.
If it's a lot of citations, then it'll take longer.
We don't know yet, but yes, I'm happy to
Okay.
share that. Yes.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It is currently 6:01 PM on March 28th, 2022. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. 551.071, purpose of private consultation with board attorney. 551.072, purpose of deliberating or purchase or exchange of real property. 551.074, purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, reassignment, duties, or discipline of a public officer or employee. 551.075, the purpose of deliberations regarding employment of security. 551.082, considering the discipline of a public school child. 551.0821, to discuss specific personal identifying information about a student. Also in tonight's closed sessions is the renewal of assistant principals, correct? Yes, correct. Okay. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on March 28th, 2022 at 7:08 PM and will now consider the subject set forth in the posted agenda. Welcome everyone to the 7 o'clock portion of our March meeting. And we have Comanche Springs Elementary School here and Assistant Principal Mary Mendel to lead us in our opening ceremony. So welcome.
Charlotte is a fourth grader. Her parents are Stephen and Jennifer Jackson. Charlotte is a brown belt at Lone Star Black Belt Academy. She enjoys dancing for encore, singing, crafting, and doing karate. And she is a member of our honor choir. Thank you, Charlotte, for being here. All right, next we have Jordan Illy. Come on up. Jordan is also a fourth grader. His parents are Jack and Marissa Illy. And Jordan likes playing baseball, video games, and listening to music. And he is also a member of our honor choir. Next, we have Hadley Davis. Hadley Davis is a fourth grader as well. Her parents are William and Lindsay Davis. Hadley loves art, dance, and spending time with her friends and family. And she is a member of our Girls on the Run. And next we have Sloan Hammock. Come on up, Sloan. Sloan's mom is Amy Hammock. Sloan enjoys reading, playing softball, riding horses, and doing arts and crafts. And then we also have her sister, Bailey Hammock. As you can see, Bailey can be animated. She keeps us laughing around the campus. We love having her there. She's a first grader. Her mom is also Amy Hammock, and Bailey likes to read, play softball, and watch Peppa Pig. Everyone will please stand so that we may say the pledge. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now pledge to the Texas flag. Salute and pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Comanche Springs. We do have an item of communications, a special recognition, and we'll call on Deputy Superintendent Dr. Parker.
Thank you. It is my privilege tonight to celebrate not just our young children, but also our secondary students, all of which are from Saginaw High School. Joining me and doing the introductions will be our Saginaw Lions Club, Kelly Dower, President. Please join me up here. And Mary Ann Foley, who is our Vice President. These ladies keep the Saginaw Lions Club running and doing an incredible job of honoring our community and supporting our students. So Kelly, it's all yours as you introduce our students. Which, by the way, I have to say this, I'm sorry. Two of these, the two seniors, also won the Rotary speech contest as well. Nice. So that's exciting. Yeah, so lots of money these girls earned.
Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Getting my papers in order. All right. So I just wanted to give just a little bit of background about the contest that these students have entered. Every year, the Lions Club, we do the art poster contest for drug awareness. Red Ribbon Week is what we call it. And then last year we started with the speech and essay contests, and those are just for the high school level. There are so many different entities of the Lions Club that I've been learning about since becoming a member a few years ago. And the Drug Awareness Committee is the one that funds a lot of these, like the Red Ribbon posters and then the drug awareness speech. So students that entered the drug awareness speech, their topic was the secrets of vaping products and what they can do to control vaping among their peers. So our first place winner, which was one of our students this year, was Chloe Mae Nedson. She's an 11th grader. And then the next contest, we had second place winner too for the same contest. And she's also an alternate because Miss Chloe is going to be going to state competition that is in May at the Abilene Convention. And the second place winner, also the alternate, is Madison Huertas. Oh, I got that on here. I didn't have it in bold. Okay, so Chloe had the $1,500 scholarship for her choice of college. And then Madison in second place got the $1,000 scholarship. Yay. And then another division of the contest was the diabetes essay. This topic was why diabetes awareness is important in grades K to 12 and how they can educate students. We had our third place winner, Zoe Rigo, and she won a $1,000 scholarship. And then this last contest was a doozy. They had, it's called the Outstanding Youth Contest. The students were judged on an essay, the innovation and change now, and what the student is doing now, not tomorrow or later, to affect change. They submitted their GPA, letters of recommendation, biographical information statement, which included their community service, leadership experience, participation. And at the competition, each of them had a personal interview with the panel. And one of our students got the second place winner and runner up for the state contest, which is also in May, Sumitra Abby Pullum, and she won a $1,000 scholarship. Hey. And in just a minute before we finish, I'm going to have her teachers stand up, please. We have Ms. Victoria Wood from Saginaw High School. And we have a surprise. We are giving a certificate of appreciation to Ms. Wood because she has really, when we first sent out the email last year for last year's contest, we were just really going to try one contest because we haven't done this before. She had kids ready to do all 5 categories and we'd already missed some deadlines and we were just wow. So this year she had students ready and lined up. And so the Drug Awareness Council of the Lions have a certificate for her, appreciation for your participation in the Lions Drug Awareness Program addressing issues that affect our youth, presented to Victoria Wood. Yay.
I want to make one comment. It's teachers like Victoria Wood that makes MTS IC the best place in the world to work.
Yes, and the students especially.
That's all you have to do. All right, so now you can go back to your seat.
I want to picture all of them.
When you want with their certificates, yes, that'll probably be good.
There we go. Okay.
Wish help us out.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Speaking in between. Thank you all very much. Congratulations too.
Yeah.
Y'all are welcome. Yeah, y'all can go. Do that. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay.
As fast as you can.
Good time. Thank you to the Lions Club also. That's
I will
great.
tell you, these 2 ladies, Lions Club came to us and it was Diane and Saginaw, and these 2 ladies have just really re-energized and are seeking ways to support our kids, but to support our community.
Great.
Very proud.
Good to see the Lions Club. All right, we have one report that we need to continue from the 5 o'clock session. It's the special programs
What page is that?
report, and it was started on page 36, but I think we were on about, do you know where we were, Dr.?
We were on 57.
I should have marked it.
We're on
57? Okay, page 57.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So for this portion, I'm going to review some components of the compliance and accountability systems. There are 2 main compliance and accountability systems. One is our differentiated monitoring and support system, and the other is our results-driven accountability for special education. It's based upon the state reorganized the previous PBMAS system, and then our state performance plan indicators were restructured within these 2 systems. And so the differentiated monitoring and support is based upon a 6-year cyclical review. And so we became notified of that the district was going to be audited in January, on January the 5th. And that opened we had a brief meeting with TEA they outlined for us that there were 25 student records that would be randomly selected, and there were 92 indicators across 3 domains for every student record that was selected. And so we had to upload documents and evidence of compliance on each of those 2 indicators, on every one of those indicators within the window of January 5th through the 19th. And so the TEA conducted their review during the months of January through March, and we received preliminary notification in March that there were items, if we could correct items that were not systemic, then we would be given the opportunity to do so between March and May. So we were notified in March that there were no items that we were able to correct, but that doesn't necessarily mean there were no deficiencies. We don't know that yet. So the final report will come to us, to Dr. Chadwell in May. And then the purpose of that is to, again, look to see where there are opportunities for improvement. The biggest challenges that we self-identified as a part of this process, we did a self-audit prior to the TEA audit in January, and we identified challenges with obtaining parent signatures as a result of during the COVID shutdown. So we were challenged with, we had verbal consent from families, and we had documentation in the deliberations of all the IEP meetings of parent consent. But in all cases, we did not have a physical signature available to us to submit with some of the documentation. So what we're doing currently to address that is we've gotten feedback from families that they prefer, we have a higher participation rate through virtual IEP meetings. And so we're looking at options of how to get digital signatures. Our staff can digitally sign, but the platform doesn't lend itself to a digital signature for others outside of the organization. So we're looking at what options we have available so that we can maintain the high rate of parent participation while providing a technology option for digital signatures.
So how have you documented that?
We documented in the deliberations. So for every IEP meeting that's conducted, we are required to keep written deliberations of the decisions. And so it was noted in the deliberations, as well as there's a signature page where we'd say parent provided verbal agreement via Teams. So we had it documented. We don't know yet if TEA is accepting, that as having a signature. And then we followed up. It was our practice to follow up with a copy of the signature page from the document, send it home to the parent or scan it, and hope that we received it back. And in some cases we did not. So we're trying to, through that PDSA cycle, look at how we can accommodate the requirement to have this actual parent signature while also supporting virtual avenues for conducting those meetings. So that was probably the biggest area. We had to have evidence of progress on IEP. So again, it goes back to consistency across the system. So every campus and teacher has a way of documenting IEP progress. It's part of the IEP, but we didn't have consistent data management system for specific classroom documentation for implementation. So those were probably the two areas that we identified preliminarily, but we'll hear from TEA in May regarding that audit.
Will the final report have any, it'll give findings to the district? Is it something that the board will have to approve, sign off on, or is it, you said it goes to the superintendent, so?
Yes, sir.
Other fiscal penalties or?
No,
okay.
so within there's so many indicators for compliance within the special education umbrella that the expectation is that we are taking steps for continuous improvement, and that the ultimate outcome is student progress, that students are benefiting from the services that are being provided. So in some cases, they may identify that it's what we call a procedural error, that we have procedures that we need to standardize in some cases, or we need to change, but it does not have a negative impact on the student actually receiving their services. So we just have to show that we're taking corrective actions and doing our due diligence to try to improve systems discrepancies when they've been identified. So within our other monitoring system, we have our results-driven accountability, or RDA, And that has to do with disproportionality. So right now, we're currently working on 3 corrective action plans, one for our preschool least restrictive environment, which the focus is on integrating students, our little ones, ages 3 to 5, in more inclusive settings. And so working with Stacy DeHoyos to see if we can't identify community partner daycares where we can actually serve some of our students in the community. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to address that. We're also looking at how we, as I mentioned before, with the PEAM system that relates to how we code special ed time. And we identified a discrepancy in how they were coding some of the time for our preschool kids. And so we were able to make some amendments to and give credit for the amount of time that they're spending with typical peers, particularly with our integrated 3-year-old and our integrated 4-year-old program. And now with the expansion of pre-K, also how we are including students with special needs in the regular pre-K program. And then disciplinary removals that we, in some areas that students with IEPs are being removed at a higher rate than students without IEPs. And so the challenge with that is that we are required to track all the days of removal for students with IEPs because there is a procedural legal requirement for us to conduct certain actions once we get to a certain amount of days of removal. And those same safeguards or limitations are not imposed on students without IEPs. So it's, when you say disciplinary removals, they're following the student code of conduct. Some students have behavior supports that outline how discipline will be handled, but so we're monitoring that and working with campuses so that students with IEPs are not being removed at a higher rate than students without. And then our achievement in grades 3 through 8, again, it's several years ago when we changed from TAX and then 3 versions of STAR, they eliminated the opportunity for students to be tested on a modified test. So we have STAR, the regular STAR test with accommodations, regular STAR without accommodations, STAR on grade level curriculum with accommodations, and then we have STAR alternate for students who are working on prerequisites to the regular curriculum. And so when they eliminated the STAR modified, they eliminated a test that was really designed for students who are working through an IEP that require a modified curriculum. So there's a discrepancy somewhat with the testing system and what students may be receiving as far as instruction. It's tied to in grade level standards, but the format of the instruction may reflect more modified content than the regular content. So we're working on that to improve instructional practices and ensuring that the instruction reflects the rigor of the curriculum. Any questions on that?
Well,
Go ahead. You can do it. You can go.
Well, I guess my concern there is on the modified, in order for it to meet the IEP, isn't that the one that the teachers were being able to adjust to the students' learning capability?
That's correct. So that's
and we no longer have that?
That's correct. There's no longer a STAR modified test. So students are either taking STAR, the regular STAR, STAR with accommodations. Those are the only options for students that are enrolled in grade level courses that may require some modified content. So we're working really hard on that. But we know by the nature of some of the students, the nature of their needs, that their learning differences prevent them from being able to perform at a high level on grade level content.
Okay, oh, here it is. I should have had this pulled up earlier and I didn't. Looking back in March 29, 2021, so almost I guess a year ago, yeah. You gave a report and talked about the audit.
Yes.
And the compliance issues. I mean, can you talk to us? I mean, I know you've talked about that a little bit, but yes. Can you give us a little bit more information? And one thing I'm specifically concerned about is staffing and not being able to be in compliance with IEPs.
Sure.
Because you don't have staff, and also not being in compliance with reporting sometimes because you have 45 days. And so I know y'all are working on that, and I know it's staffing is a big problem, but just think the board should be aware of Because there are times, I mean, I would be interested to know how many times we've been out of compliance.
Sure, and I can get that information for you. So the challenges that we face with being not only in a rapid growth district, but seeing the kind of growth overall in the program is having the capacity. We know and research tells us what best practices are for class sizes and how to best support students with the highest needs. And so what we've seen with the growth in the program is it's been very difficult to maintain a low student to staff ratio. So for every one of those 2,976 students, each one of them has an individualized education program. So if you have a resource teacher, for example, at the secondary level, they may have periods of students with individualized plans. Well, best practice is between 15 and 20 students, 20 to 25 within like 2 class periods to be able to individualize instruction. And so what our class sizes are now, they exceed that capacity. And so we're also, everybody's working really hard. We're also looking at, when we expand our curriculum, is looking how we can build the capacity of general education teachers so that they can serve some of the students that may not have the same level of significant need. And so more kids are included, but that then requires additional staffing for training and coaching and those types of things. Our largest growing population right now are students with more significant needs, in many cases who are unable to receive instruction in the general education setting as compared to students who are on grade level. So these are students who are on an alternate curriculum. We know that especially at the elementary level are the little bitties at Hadley that, for intervention, intensive early intervention to receive the most positive outcomes, that, class sizes of 6 to 8 are ideal. And right now our preschool classes are anywhere from 8 to 10. So we're adding paraprofessional support, but that's a lot of little people with high needs. So every one of those children has an individualized plan that teachers are trying to implement. And then it's complicated because many times the students that have the most complex needs also require other services. So we have students that not only have instructional needs, but they may have needs for speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, I think I said speech therapy. So when you combine that, we've got to trying to balance the load of implementing student IEPs, and like for all of those specialty staff that I just mentioned, they're also responsible for conducting their evaluations and participating in the IEP meetings in addition to implementing the plans, the individualized plans for students. So it's just, trying to find that balance and then using staffing creatively. So one of the things that we're looking at to try to offset the impact is for diagnosticians. You'll notice on the staffing plan that was presented as a proposal that we're looking at adding increasing the IEP facilitators and the clerical support. And what that will do is it will free up the diagnosticians to be able to use their expertise to try to meet the demand of the expanding evaluations that we have with the referrals, and let the clerks help with the clerical part and scheduling with families, and the IEP facilitators will be facilitating the IEP meeting so that diagnosticians, the SLPs also. Right now, the speech language pathologists are not only providing therapy, they're conducting evaluations, and when the student's eligibility does not have any other service but speech, they also are the ARD facilitator. So they are facilitating ARDs, providing therapy, and then also conducting evaluations. And so you put all that together, and then we've got timelines. So we have, from the date of consent that parents give consent for an evaluation, we have 45 school days to complete the evaluation. And then we have 30 days following that timeline to be able to put an individualized plan in place, unless they're 2, and then we must have the plan in place on or before their 3rd birthday. And so again, just trying to keep up with the volume. So that's where we've had some non-compliance during COVID, because the guidance that we received from the state is that we could not conduct the legally mandated full and individual evaluation if the standard testing procedures required one-on-one testing, which that is typically what's required, because it violated the standard administration procedures. So we had students that we were unable to evaluate due to COVID limitations, and so we missed timelines on the preschool side and as well as on the other 3 to 21 side. And so this year we've got 3 contractors that are currently helping us with conducting our evaluations. Between the initial evaluations and the reevaluations that are required every 3 years to reestablish eligibility, will be in excess of 800 evaluations that have been conducted by our evaluation staff this year.
How many diagnosticians short are we working?
Well, we currently have only one open diagnostician position, which we've contracted for services. We have 3 through some grant funds that we received, some overflow funds we received from the state. We've earmarked that specifically for to support the diagnosticians. So we have 1 assigned per feeder right now to help with the overflow.
Did I understand you to say we have IEP facilitators?
Yes.
Not IEP, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We started
okay.
that this year at 3 campuses. And so what they are doing is they are at 3 feeders, they are actually scheduling the ARD meetings and conducting the ARD meetings so that the diagnosticians and the SLPs can focus on therapy or the evaluations. And then they just show up at the meetings when they are reviewing and discussing assessment or reviewing assessment results.
So do they do all the paperwork, or does the diagnostician do all the paperwork?
The diagnostician only writes their evaluation reports on those campuses where we have the facilitators.
How's
and
that
then
working?
It's working great, where it's just a lot of volume, you know, so we've gotten positive feedback. This is our first year for implementation as kind of a pilot, and the feedback that we've gotten is that it's working well. And then now that set, though, that helped us to identify where the clerical needs were, so that, for example, at the high schools, we have in excess of around 300 students with IEPs at each high school. The average caseload for a diagnostician is about 100 to be able to be effective, 125 at the high end. And so, but an IEP facilitator can facilitate about 300 meetings a year, but needs help with the clerical piece, with following up on, sending out the notices, following up on the scheduling and filing. We have to copy and file and disseminate copies of all the documents and maintain the eligibility file. So the clerk can help with that again to free up more time for the facilitators to be able to have more ARD meetings.
Is there a state recommended number for diagnosticians? You say they're up to 100 to 125.
Yes.
Is there a recommended number that the agency, whatever agency oversees that recommends? We may not follow it, but I'm sure there's a recommendation.
There is, through the Texas Educational Diagnosticians Association, or TEDA. There are state recommended practices, and the recommended caseload is between 90 and 125. So that's the recommended caseload.
On the high end.
Yes.
Doesn't some of their license have they can't take over so many, like a speech therapist, they can only take so many to manage?
Well, so
it's a license requirement. Is that the same thing we're talking about?
Well, so there is no licensing limitation to a caseload. Okay. And so there's best practice guidelines. The only license limitation is in the field of behavior analysis, where the supervision, it's the same with speech language pathologists. If they're in their supervision year and a speech language pathologist is serving as a supervisor, they have to supervise so many hours of their trainee, and they cannot exceed a certain percentage of their caseload. That's more strongly enforced and required in the medical field versus in an educational model. And so the way that we've tried to help with the speech therapy workload is to, for some of our specialized classes where they're in a language-rich environment, that they push in and model lessons and then pull kids in the classroom environment, so that we're modeling and for the teachers and the paraprofessionals who can then extend that therapy into the daily activities that the child experiences in the classroom. And then we have small group, and so the groups are variable, again, based upon the individualized needs and what the ARD committee determines the student requires. And that's across all areas of therapy.
So Heather, in future time, I would like to know some data on the facilitators, because I've I've heard positive and not as positive on facilitators. I think that, what we have to make sure that we understand is that those parents need, the facilitator and or the diagnostician, they really need to know those kids so that they can give them valuable input and feedback on what needs to be done. And I think lots of times there's misunderstandings because, I do understand you're shorthanded. I do understand all those pieces, but I think that we just really need to be cautious as we move forward and make sure we're getting good data and good information about what's going on.
And this is our, this is our first year to implement that
right.
model. So there's a steep learning curve for everyone on really what are their roles and responsibilities of the committee members and who best to provide that input. If there's ever a question about eligibility or assessment, then we require, or it's a discipline for a manifestation determination review, we require the certified assessment personnel to be present.
Well, I think it just goes back to communication because I had several that facilitators just showed up and they didn't know they were there. I mean, they were like, who are you? And so I think that communication is going to be real key as we continue to make changes and try to serve our kids, but even, better than we are already. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so then I'm going to move on to, we also, at the same time, we came up for our cyclical review for dyslexia. So that was simultaneous to our special education audit. This format was a little bit different. We had the opportunity to select our 6 student records, and so that gave us an opportunity to look at those student records that would best reflect the overall theme of our dyslexia programming. There were 11 indicators per student and 7 additional indicators for students who were emergent bilingual as part of their instruction. So again, the window was the same. We submitted all documents to TEA. We were notified on January the 5th and then had from January 5th to the 19th to upload those documents. Beth and her team worked diligently to meet that timeline. We're supposed to be receiving our preliminary review with TEA before the end of this month, but we have not been notified yet of that meeting. So again, there will be a final report that will be provided to Dr. Chadwell in May. And so then we'll have a better idea of any corrective actions or opportunities for improvement that we need to address. So that brings me now to our Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so 504 differs from special education in that we identify students not through the formal evaluation process under special education, but these are students that have an identified disability condition that's usually documented through a medical doctor, but may have other conditions. As long as we have evidence to substantiate that they are a child with a disability, then what they receive is they receive a 504 accommodation plan. And so they receive reasonable accommodations to reduce the impact of the disability on their learning, but it doesn't result in an individualized education program or specially designed instruction. Unlike special ed, even though the funding under the special ed side does not cover the cost of educating students, Section 504 is an unfunded mandate, and the due process that we to address any parent concerns in that area is through the Office of Civil Rights. So our trends, our 504 trends are similar to what we've seen in special ed, although the total representation is less than our overall population percentages compared to special ed. But you can see a continual increase. As of this school year, we have 1,959 students identified with receiving 504 accommodations, and that reflects 8.7% of our overall student population. It's important to note that students who've been identified with dyslexia who are in need of accommodations for the dyslexia are captured under 504. We also have some students with dyslexia under the special ed umbrella, but they require an IEP to address their specialized needs. So in summary, all of our areas reflect an upward trend in the number of students being identified and served. Students with the greatest needs, they continue to increase at a rate greater than the overall district growth rate. The high volume of evaluations and growth present challenges for staffing, compliance, programming, and sustainability. And do you have any additional questions or comments?
Do not. Thank you. Thank you.
So dyslexia
Yes.
falls under 504, and we don't get any funding?
Right, we are getting now, as of last year, a dyslexia allotment, which is based upon our PEEMS. So we have 2 avenues for serving students with dyslexia, and it's based upon that review of the evaluation by the art committee will determine can their needs be met through the regular dyslexia program, the standard dyslexia protocol, or do they require individualized educational programming through special education, and to which there is a little bit of funding. Yes.
Helps.
Yes, and the funding is really through TEA for the dyslexia. It's not related to 504. So Section 504 supports and services are an unfunded mandate that the district has to meet.
Dr. Hughes, thank you so much
Thank you.
for bringing that report. That's a wide range of services that you're providing to the students in our district, and we appreciate the efforts of you and your entire staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hughes.
Good job.
All right, that does conclude the reports from the 5 o'clock session. We move now to action items, and the first is to act on a joint election with Tarrant County. It's on page 76 of your board book, Mr. Rob Welch.
I move to give the board president and superintendent the authority to enter into the May 2022 joint election agreement and contract for election services.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Paige. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. If there are any opposed, there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to set the special meeting to canvass the 2022 school election trustee.
I move we approve the special meeting to canvass the 2022 May school trustee election for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 4:30.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Paige. You notice it does fall within the required timelines of the election. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Means I guess you'll be here. Motion carries 7-0. Didn't get an amen on that. Next is to approve the 2021-2022 submission of a class size waiver to TEA. Stirring time. She's got to, you want to go ahead?
You want her to have to get out.
You want to let her say?
You weren't fast enough.
You're here, come on.
Good evening to you, Board of Trustees and Dr. Chadwell. Before you, in your board book, I have for you the current class size waivers for the report that was taken on March the 8th. As you will see, again, we have 5 campuses. This is kind of normal for us. And if you look at that report, Chisholm Ridge had 2 sections in their 4th grade. And if you looked at that report was at those, they exceeded the 22-to-1, so that was 23. If you looked at Dozier 2nd grade, they had 1 section. Elkins, 2nd grade, they had 2 sections. Greenfield, 2nd grade, 2 sections, and Remington, 1st grade, 1 section. As you can see, each one of those sections, 100%, 1 child caused a waiver. Do you have any questions?
I move to approve the submission of the pre-kindergarten through 4th grade class size exemption as presented.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Donna. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Get along. Yeah, I know.
She's a pro.
All right, action item 7D, consider the approving Birdville Regional Day School Program for the Deaf Shared Services Arrangement Agreement. Dr. Parker. She was waiting to see if anybody, go ahead.
I will move. I move that the board approve the Birdville Regional Day School Program for the Deaf Shared Services Arrangement Agreement as presented in the board book.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to consider approving the 2022-2023 campus staffing proposal that was presented last month.
I move we approve the 2022-2023 campus staffing proposal.
Second.
Presented last month.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Liz. Questions on that? Didn't change any. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are no. Motion carries 7-0, sorry. Consider approving a resolution for the provision of premium pay during winter weather closure.
I move we approve the resolution of the provision of premium pay during the winter weather closure as presented.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to act on the purchase and installation of replacement carpet at the Hadley Development Center and Watson High School.
I move we award Gomez Floor Covering Inc. for the purchase and installation of replacement carpet at Hadley Development Center and Watson High School at a cost not to exceed $146,627.40.
Second.
It's a very specific number there, Mr. Kidd.
It is very specific.
40 cents in there. Is that replacing all the carpet there?
It replaces all the carpet at Watson. It replaces everything at Hadley except the second floor, all the student section at Hadley.
Bottom floor?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right. You probably told us that. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. Thought I had to ask him a question. He waited here until 8 o'clock at night. Okay, that takes us through the action item section. Is there any questions on the routine monthly reports? Hearing none, we'll review the 2022 board planning calendar, Dr. Chapter.
Yes, this is on page 161 of your packet. You'll notice we'll continue with finance and budget reports leading up into this next school year. We also have a construction maintenance update, mom projects update, and child nutrition report. In addition, we will have additional staffing proposals coming to you. That'll be pretty regular all the way through June. We also have board member continuing education report. I believe you've received all your information from Ms. Nevins to make sure we're all up to date there. And we also have District of Innovations policies update, and then also a report by Dr. Barnes on added instructional minutes for the 22-23 year. We're looking at a more sustained approach there to build up additional days at our elementary level, adding some minutes at the elementary and middle. High school would stay the same. And so that report will be coming to y'all for just review at that point in the end. So we are making sure we keep the 3 tiers and keeping the timeline between the 3 tiers. And so that's something that as we developed that and worked on that in the leadership team, we're going to make sure that there's no problems there in terms of our pickup for our 3 tiers. We also have under routine reports, a tax collection, financial report, additional bids and proposals, report on purchases made through a cooperative purchasing program, the EMSISD Education Foundation financial report, and the Gold Card program report.
Making sure that's it. Okay,
that's it. Thank you.
And so the staffing, you're going to bring us a report in kind of like we did this time.
Yes, sir.
And continue that on all the way through till.
Yes, sir.
Till June.
So some of those are that we'll bring you next time are on some reclassification of positions. We're also looking at those that if we have any that we pick up because of enrollment, but we feel like we've got most of those. In fact, we'll start posting jobs tomorrow. So all the jobs that you just approved a few moments ago, we'll start posting and moving forward for those. So I think we're going to be in really good shape by coming in this early, especially with the work you did last month with the compensation plan. So.
All right. That brings us to consent agenda for approval. Does the chair entertain a motion?
I move we approve the consent. Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Marilyn to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Board President's announcements. I'll just point out that at your place there was 2 RSVPs that Becky asked us to fill out. So if you haven't filled them out already, they were in your folder. One of them is about the 2022 Summer Leadership Institute. It's in Fort Worth this year, June 29th through July 2nd. So we can kind of get a count there of 2 plans ongoing. Other than that, Dr. Chapel?
Yes. So a lot of things on the calendar, and just want to say that we have tomorrow night an opportunity at Saginaw High School for 2 different events. We have an encore performance of the One Act play that they did a great job. They're an alternate in the contest. Unfortunately, didn't advance, but I hear that it's great. It's the only One Act play of the 3 that I haven't seen. I'm going to see it tomorrow night, so I'm looking forward to that. We also have a playoff game for boys soccer. That's also at Saginaw Rough Rider Stadium. We flipped home and home with Wichita Falls, so thank goodness we flipped right. So that'll be there, and they had a great game last week against Mansfield Summit, and so we look forward to that game tomorrow night as well. But we also have the Chisholm Trail One Act play that's going to be performing later this week, Thursday or something. We'll get you the information, but it is a wonderful play as well, and just it's a lot of good things going on. Also on the calendar next week is Week of the Young Child at the Hadley Development Center. We have Gold Card Lunch on April the 14th. If you're planning on going to that, please let Megan know so we can make sure that we have y'all on the RSVP list for that. We also have the EMS Art Experience at the Hollenstein. That's on April the 22nd. Evening with the Experts for elementary at Chisholm Trail on April the 28th in the evening. We also have Employee Service Awards on May the 3rd. If you plan on attending that, also let Megan know. You're more than welcome to attend that event. And May the 7th, remember we had a date change for the Education Foundation Gala. That'll be at Chisholm Trail at 6:30 to 8:30. And then we also have a Spring Realtor event. That event will be a little bit different. We're trying to change them up every time, but that's from 10 to 1. Once again, if you'd like to be there and attend that event, that'll be at the Hollenstein. It'll be a little bit different than last time. Again, we're trying to bring something different every time we do that. And last but not least, I know we mentioned this in the last board meeting, we do have the Fine Arts Showcase that's been rescheduled. It's not going to be at the Bass because we're still under the challenges there of their rules and guidelines for performers, but we are going to be at the Texas Hall at UTA. It's a very, very nice facility. It's not the Bass, okay? But the Bass is the Bass, but it is very nice. In fact, as far as a facility, it's going to be great for our kids to move in and out of that. And we're also going to be able to get ticket price down. So the ticket prices will be reflective of the cost that we have. And that's on May the 24th at 6.
Are we keeping the same rotation as the school? Just back on that, whatever, whose ever turn it was to go?
Sir.
Who's going? Okay.
Yes, there.
And what time is the One Act play?
One Act play is at 6 o'clock.
6:30.
6:30 is what I meant to say.
And the
Jim,
soccer is
can
at
I
6.
do a shout out on UIL academics very quickly?
Yeah, because Chisholm Trail won.
Chisholm Trail High School won district UI academic UIL, which is awesome. And I meant to say when Saginaw was here, we have 20 students advancing to regional in UIL, and we expect 10 more after the speech contest on Saturday. So they're really doing well in our academics.
Thank you for bringing that up. Seeing there's no further business to come before this board, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Thought we were going to stay here. Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. We're adjourned.